Well, could the answer to Toronto's traffic woes be free transit? That was the topic of discussion at a book launch tonight, taking a look at what it would take to make it a reality in this city. The co-authors say a major shift like this is about more than just making transit accessible for low-income people.
Any city theoretically can have it. It's a very difficult thing to do, but like public Medicare, I think it's necessary, I think.
That's the argument being made in a book called Free Public Transit and Why We Don't Pay to Ride Elevators. The collection of essays from around the world looks at why transit should be seen as a right rather than a commodity to be purchased.
It has a lot to do with people's right to mobility. It's a public good, which isn't just for people who are low incomes. In a big city like Toronto, this should be a service that people have, a critical part.
One of the obvious impacts of making transit free, well, it would lead to less cars on the road as more people opt to ride the rocket.
The studies show across Canada about 30% of people who commute right now in their cars would be willing to switch modes if the option was available for them.
But one of the other benefits advocates say is the potential impact on climate change.
In some regions of the city, of the world, and Montreal particularly, it's something like 65% of our greenhouse gases, our emissions are coming out of the transport sector. About 85% of that is in the private automobile. It's the rush hour going back and forth.
Jason Prince, an urban planner who co-edited the book, says it's not just as simple as dropping the fare. Governments first have to invest in building more transit that works in all parts of the city.
If you were to make it free tomorrow in Toronto, that would throw the whole system into lockjaw. It would be chaos. You'd have to increase capacity first and then drop the price barrier.
But investments in transit is something Toronto has fallen short on. Only about 30% of the TTC's operating costs is paid for by government funding. The other 70% comes from customer fares.
It's the highest in North America, and it's one of the highest in the global north.
Right now, part of that funding comes from the provincial gas tax, something incoming Premier Doug Ford has promised to slash. But Prince points out there is at least one benefit to having a former Toronto City Councillor at Queen's Park.
Experienced municipal politicians that really are able to kick out a big idea like free public transport. That's when it works.
There are currently 100 cities around the globe with free public transit. The biggest system is in Estonia, in a city of about 500,000 people.